Hello from the KeepDataPrivate team. You have myself, Daniela, and you have Marcel on the call today.
Hiya.
So, this is our first community event since the US elections on the 5th of November this year. We know the outcome. It is Donald Trump and his team. Some call it a cult. I don't know. The grand old party seems to currently somewhat still stand behind him, and and everyone seems to be working towards a peaceful handover of power. Um, the first point that I'd like to raise here that is connected to data is that the incoming Trump administration has not yet signed the ethics agreements and the ethics practices that suggest that he and his team are not yet ready to say that conflict of interest is a problem or sharing of data is something they want to do. Let's keep following that. I have no particular insight. All I know is that allegedly Trump's team have not yet signed the contracts with the government to suggest they are worthy people to be in power. Let's see how that goes. After all, that's what the public wanted. Let's see how that goes. Secondly, Trump always said he will stop online surveillance. And he also said other things that did not come true. What a surprise. So I would not put my trust and faith in it because even during his first time in office, his administration has already tightened some online surveillance in the direction of surveying people more. That means they're more open to spying on their own people, and therefore, as I mentioned, I'm not holding my breath to see positives coming out of it. And yes, those are the 2 points really. I don't have a third one. I'm still a little bit in shock and horror. I think a lot of people are going to go through a hard time. I do think a few billionaires are going to get the cream off the top. Good on them. Um, but for the large part, up to the middle classes, including the upper middle classes, they will suffer. They will lose money. Some people will lose healthcare. I'm not sure if Social Security is going to survive the second term that's coming up at this point, but that's my personal opinion. I have no deep insights. Keep on those topics yourself if you like. Do read the reports as and when they come out. Don't just believe people and what they tell you, but do your own research and stay up to date. What does that mean for us, normal people, though? Um, I will be a lot more careful about my data. I do not live in the US. However, a lot of the data centers in around the world, or a lot of the data centers are actually located within the US and therefore have to follow US data collection guidelines and regulation. In Europe, we do have GDPR, the General Data Processing Regulation, which which is intended to protect individuals' data. Um, Personally, I think it's a good first step in that direction. I don't think it's perfect yet. I think more initiatives will follow. I think it's a learning curve, a learning process, and I'm very glad that we're on the way to finding a better way. But I do know currently some of my data is being held in US data centers. So it does impact me a little bit. And as always, if something happens in the US, it does have a spillover tendency into the rest of the world. And that means eventually it's going to reach Europe as well. And for that reason, like I recently read online, somebody suggested that think about every little bit of data about you as if it were a nude picture of yourself. Think about it. You, naked for everyone to see. If that is what you want and what you feel comfortable with, good on you. I'm not that person. I wouldn't want to have naked pictures of me everywhere out there. So thinking about data my personal data in the same way. I shall be changing a few things that I will be doing with my data myself. I will be a lot more critical where I put data. I will be deleting data. I will try and get um, providers to delete my data from the servers and just clamp down on every use of my data if I can. Marcel, do you want to add anything, any personal reflections on the elections?
I think I'm going to put a positive spin on it
Mm-hmm.
as best I can. We know what to expect because we've had Trump as president before. So he has tried to do various things in the previous administration. He was blocked from doing a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Project 25, written documentation as to what the plan is. So we know what to expect. Um, Privacy and data privacy in particular is not on the agenda. So there is going to be a lot of rolling back of protections for people. And we know this. We know this is going to happen. It's not guesswork. We don't have to worry whether or not it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. So we can act accordingly. So we know from any information that's supposed to be anonymous. Whistleblowers is a prime example, where somebody is allowed to report something and that the government, and particularly the administration, doesn't want people to know. That anonymity is going to go away. So we're going to have a lot less whistleblowers, a lot fewer whistleblowers telling us what's going on in the inside, because people will be doing it publicly. And this is the way we need to think about the data. Any data we put out there, right, will not be private nor anonymous, and we know this. And it's nice to, in that way, to know what to expect. To rely on companies saying, "Oh, we will keep your data private. We'll never share it. We'll never sell it. We'll only make it available to law enforcement when required." It's basically stating that your data is not private. If the government wants access to your data, they will get access to your data. And I think that is what we need to remember. There will be nothing private. They will know. If you criticize them, they will know who it is. And they've publicly said they will pursue people that are critical of them and what's going on. So that is the world we have to assume.
I think you have
We now
frozen.
know. I can still see you. Um,
Can you repeat your last sentence, please, from what we can assume?
we can assume, right, that any data we put out there will not only be private, right, it will also not be anonymous. So even if we don't want it to be private, we want it to be public, but we want to remain anonymous, we cannot assume that anonymity. And any data that we want to be private, we cannot assume that it will remain private. So anything we say or do online, right, will be public information. Anything we do or say outside of our homes, for now, right, will be public information. If you have one of these listening boxes that connect to the internet, then you can also assume that anything you say or do in private will also be available publicly. And I think from a positive side of things, at least we know that. We don't have to live in a world where we think it will be fine. We live in a world where everything we do or say is public, and we can act accordingly. Right? Unless you are in control of your data, unless you personally encrypt your data, and you know for a fact that there's no back door, then you will need to assume that that data is available publicly. And that, I think, comes back to your nude picture. The same way you don't take a picture of yourself, right? Unless you want people that to be public, unless you want people to know who it is, where it was taken, when it was taken, right? Who else was in the room? And I think a great example of that is Epstein's Island.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
People have got hold of mobile phone location data for the island. Right? They know who's been on the island. That information is no longer private. That information, right, is now in the public. Everyone who ever went to his island, right, there is a record of that. Okay, and that is what world we live in, right? If you thought you were doing something that was private, right, going back in history, you thought, oh, no one's going to know, right? If you took your mobile phone with you and you went to that island, we know now who went and when they went, how many times they went, how long they were there for. That
Who else
information is
was
now
there for
public.
at the same time?
Sorry,
Who else was there at the same time?
who else was there, etc. That information is no longer public,
Mhm.
and that is the world we live in. So we know that. We know everything we do is outside will be public. We know information that you thought was private is no longer private,
Mhm.
and we therefore can act with that mindset, not with the illusion that your data is held privately because the company says they will never share your data. We now know that everything you do will effectively be public. And I think from that perspective, yeah, it makes people personally responsible for the data.
Mhm.
If you don't want your data shared, don't share it. If you don't want your data made public, don't put it online. If you don't want people to know who it is, don't put it online. Don't share it. Don't upload it. Don't do anything with it.
Mhm.
Keep it private. If you don't care and you don't mind it being public and you don't mind people knowing it was you, right? Then fine, carry on. Do it. Publish your photos. Yeah. If you don't mind people knowing. So anything you do outside your home, as long as you don't have one of those listening devices in your home, is fine.
Mhm.
But outside, you're in control. You are responsible, and you will be held responsible for everything you do. That secrecy, that world of secrecy, that we could rely on in the past, right? Especially rich people who relied on that secrecy a lot. That is gone, and I think that's it's a different way of looking at it. Like I said, trying to put a positive spin of it, but at least we don't have to try as hard to convince people, right, that your data is not private. And if you want
Mhm.
your data private, these are the steps to take. Because too many people will say, "Oh no, it's fine. They'll never share my data." I think it's going to be a lot easier to convince people that if you want it private, you have to take responsibility for that privacy.
Yes, I'm smiling because I'm currently doing my best to get off WhatsApp.
Yes.
They used to say that they're encrypted and they're private, and then Facebook bought them.
Yeah.
Uh, my favorite tool at the moment is Signal. I
Yeah.
am very happy with them. They don't have the financial pressures at the moment, given that they are non-profit and seem to be doing okay with the fundraising. So I'm a lot more happy to put my faith into somebody who wholeheartedly embraces encryption and data privacy. So there are tools out for most purposes that keep your data safe and encrypted from the grounds up. Do go looking for them.
Yeah. I think it's worth pointing out with Signal, right, that if you share something with someone, even if Signal and the organization
Mhm.
cannot get access to your data, the person you shared it with can do what they like with that information. They can publish it, right? If you send a nude pic over Signal, yes, nobody at Signal is going to know that you've done that, but the person you send it to can publish it. Yeah? That's always been the case, whether or not the messaging is encrypted end to end, as it is with Signal. The person you send it to, right, will now have access to data. It's the same as putting it online. You know, once you've released that, it may as well be public, and you need to think like that. The
Mhm.
person on the other end, right? Why would they want to keep your data private? You have to trust them, right, to keep your data private. You've lost control of anything you send to someone, whether it's encrypted end to end or not.
Mhm.
Right? At least they would have to go to the individual you sent it to get access to the data. They can't just go to Signal, the organizational
Mhm.
Meta, to get hold of your WhatsApp chats. Signals they can't get hold of your WhatsApp chats. But be very aware.
Mhm.
If you give it to someone else, right, that they can make it public. You're then relying on them to keep your data private, the
Yes.
same way you rely on an organization to keep your data private. It's the concept is the same.
Mhm. I completely agree. And that has not necessarily been introduced with technology. If you were to write a letter, a handwritten letter to somebody, that also could be passed on and shown to anyone else.
Exactly.
It's not new, it's just a little bit more important now and going forward.
Yes. It's just with the postal services, there were always laws about opening up an envelope. It was always considered private.
Yes. I just say yes to that.
Yeah, considered private.
Yes, and sticking to the positive spin, I just want to point out that, first of all, um, we've been, as a humanity, not I myself personally, but as a humanity, we have been there before. Um, Governments have been spying on their own people throughout the centuries. It's not new. There always have been ways to keep oneself safe, and I recommend go to the history section in your library and get some of the books or download some online books on what people did in those days. So one movie that I'm keen on watching later on today that's been recommended on the topic is The Life of Others. Again, the life of young people behind the Iron Curtain. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm interested to find out how it would be for somebody who I consider my peer to live in that situation. So go watch it, go read up on what people did in the past. As I mentioned, people have come through situations like those in terms of privacy. Just learn a little bit on how to keep yourself safe. Because now it's this administration in January or end of January, it will be the Trump administration. At some point in the future, surely it'll change again. It's just a matter of getting through it to whichever administration is to your liking, really. And my last point, again, trying to stay on the positive side. And I just want to point out, I never knowingly committed a crime. I never knowingly, wantingly committed a crime. But currently, there are some organizations that are very, very much private, encrypted, and not found by anyone. I'm thinking of some of the larger drug organizations. I once came across a talk similar to TED Talks, where somebody who used to work for a big drug cartel talked about the logistics involved, including setting up their own national telephone network. Now, I'm not saying everyone is doing that. I'm just saying there are some organizations out there. I personally don't have the finances to do that, but I do know that there are organizations, and again, I'm not saying they're criminal, but there are organizations out there who are trying to keep things private and personal. Go look for them. I do believe that organizations like those will spring up over the next few years. I do think they will become more important, and because it's more important, I'm hoping funds will flow towards them and they will grow up and become available to everyone. I am very much a positive person generally. It's just a matter of finding the right ways of communicating with whoever you want to talk to, really.
But that's the point. The end-to-end encryption is vital. There shouldn't be a hub in the middle, where things they get decrypted and then the next leg gets encrypted again.
Mhm.
It's the end-to-end encryption that is vital. Um, whether you're communicating or not, because the medium that you use is out in the open, it's in the public, so you need to be able to encrypt things. And that's why we get back to the letter writing in the envelope. If you were a prisoner and you wrote a letter outside, you could put it in an envelope. That envelope's going to get open and somebody's going to read the letter. But people are always able to communicate via some form of encryption, typically a cipher, to be able to communicate outside, by having this, the actual encrypted message is in the public. You can view it as such and think of it as such. But if you've got your cipher in place and nobody knows, only the end-to-end people know, then you can write. And that's why so much money, for example, in World War II was spent on cracking encryption codes. And what was even more important was the cracking of the Enigma, was to not let the Germans know that it had been cracked, because then they would fix it and change it.
Mhm.
Um, and it's understanding that's the end-to-end encryption that is vital.
Yes, pretty much. Those are my first thoughts for today. What else?
On a completely separate topic, there was an article about RSA and AES encryption being broken
Yes.
by a quantum computer.
Hmm.
Um, the RSA, we know. Yeah, there's been Shor's algorithm, which is a quantum computer algorithm that has been known since the 90s when it was originally created, that the RSA encryption, which is the encryption that's used basically on the web to do your HTTPS, the S encryption, it's done with RSA encryption, that has been broken for, well, will be broken by quantum computers. What has been shown is that there's now a quantum computer that has broken a 50-bit key. Now, currently, the keys that we use are typically 1,000, if not 2,000 bits long. So we don't have a quantum computer yet that will crack it, but it is just a matter of time. The second thing that the article said was that AES encryption had also been broken. Reading the article, this is not true. So there's various other algorithms that are similar to the RSA algorithm that have been cracked, that are used by AES. But AES itself, right, hasn't been cracked by a quantum computer. AES 256, which is the current strongest AES encryption, is still considered quantum safe. There's another algorithm that can be used to crack the symmetric keys of any algorithm, whether it's AES or not. But that, although it doesn't increase exponentially as a normal classical computer would require as the key increases, it only increases quadratically. Okay, so it's faster to crack using a quantum computer, but you can just increase the key length. It's not like Shor's algorithm, which enables you to crack it, as if it's a single algorithm in a limit and a fixed length of time. As soon as you increase the key length, it becomes harder and harder to crack, and it's a quadratic increase in complexity as opposed to exponential increase, which is what classical computers do. So at 256 bits, it's still considered quantum safe. This could change because obviously calculation times increase, but it's also increasing it to 512 bits would be a fairly easy step from an encryption point of view, but it would make it quadratically at least more difficult to solve. In other words, instead of it just being doubled, right, it will be 2 to the 256 times longer to crack if we increased it to 512 bits. So that's where AES is at the moment. There is currently no AES 512 because nobody thinks it's necessary. Everyone thinks AES 256 is still safe. So anybody encrypting anything using AES 256 can sleep soundly, knowing that it's still the human that is the weak point. In other words, the password or the passcode or the PIN or whatever you use to encrypt the key with, right? That is the weak point. If you give that key to anyone, then the encryption algorithm, no matter how strong it is, right, is vulnerable. So it's about keeping your password safe, using a password that people can't guess to be safe. None of these movie things where people look around the room and look for words that somebody might have used as a password. Don't use that as your password. Think of it. There's various ways that you can create strong passwords, and just as long as it's not something that can easily be guessed. So look on the internet for different people find different ways to create passwords that are strong and encrypted, and even password managers with one good strong password, right, allows you to create randomly generated passwords of any length that you can use going forward. Is for me the best solution at the moment. But AES hasn't been cracked with a quantum computer. There is no algorithm to crack AES. The difference is with RSA, which has been cracked with an algorithm, and what they've done is demonstrated that with a 50-bit RSA key.
Good. Thanks for the summary.
No, I think it's worth mentioning, because you get these sensationalist headlines. AES has been cracked, and it's not true. It's not true.
Exactly. Just keeping ourselves safe, but knowing what really is happening and how we have to adjust to it, to the new realities.
Exactly.
I have nothing else prepared for today.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to digest. I think there's a lot to digest for people. But like I said, the positive thing is we don't have to wonder whether our data is safe. We can now assume our data isn't safe, right? Unless we have taken personal steps to encrypt it and not rely on someone else to keep our
Mhm.
data safe.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Certainty.
Yeah, we can take personal responsibility for it.
Yes. I think that will be the motto of 2025, personal
Yeah,
responsibility.
exactly, exactly.
um, I'm smiling because when I became an adult, I thought personal responsibility is something that just happens and that I do. I have because I'm an adult now. And it took me a few years to figure out that actually it is hard to take responsibility for everything that happens in my life. And I hope that over the next few months, people um, will adjust to what it really means, and that it's not going to be easy, but everyone can and will live up to it. I am very much an optimist in that respect. As I mentioned, I do think people can and do live up to what comes at them, no matter what. And people generally um, show some of the best features and sides when when they have a good challenge in front of them. So I think in a year's time, hopefully we will all be off better. We will know more. We will have learned more, and especially in the uh, data privacy field, I believe a lot will have happened until then.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yes, and we have to help make it happen as well.
Yeah.
Good. If you would like to see more content, if you would like to have bigger, chunkier updates, please help us become a member on Patreon or give us one-off donations via our Stripe account, via the website. Currently, we are running this project as a hobby more than anything else. If you would like to see more and better prepared and work through topics, including guest speakers, donate to us, help us make this project bigger, grow the community, grow it to not only us here in Europe but everyone globally. Because I do wholeheartedly believe that diversity is a good thing and will help us solve more problems than we can solve on our own. So donate, become a member, just drop into the chat and take it from there. And of course, do join us next time, next month in December. It will be towards Christmas or just around Christmas. We will still have the call. If you want to join us, do so. Glass of mulled wine, eggnog, or just alcohol-free fake glühwein, which is easily available in most places. If you're not religious, drop in anyway. Um,
Especially if you're not religious.
yes, especially if you're not religious. Uh, I'm sorry, I should point out for everyone watching, I'm not religious myself. I did grow up with that backdrop, so therefore it is something that still is in my mind. I see it around me all the time. Christmas markets are everywhere in the north or in a lot of places in the northern hemisphere. It's something I note. It's not something I celebrate. At the same time, I wouldn't stop people from celebrating. Each and every person should do as they please, as long as they don't harm somebody else. How good would the world be?
Exactly.
And with that, we will see you towards the end of December over the holidays, which many, many different groups and tribes share. And I hope to see you then. And we will have a good update on what happens between then and next time and the big data privacy news.
Sounds good.
Until then, bye bye.
Bye.